staff were really excited about coming and engaging in the community and talking about introducing the idea of success that we had was around the word thrive and what thriving means to our community and how do we encapsulate that and make sure that we're leading and assisting the district in those spaces. And the way that the community turned out and participated in that process was astounding. I'm fairly sure that in a usual annual plan type consultation, you could probably have counted the number of people there, maybe on 2 hands, maybe with a foot. So to have had hundreds of the community participate in this process was really exciting and a real honour actually to have been having those conversations with you. Tonight is about, Kobus is here to present a summary, I suppose, of the things that we heard and the conversations that were had. Some of you have already had a look, but 13 meetings in 4 days with several hundred people is encapsulated up here on the wall. And so what we're going to attempt to do is to give a bit of a summary of that and then talk about what that looks like as we move forward. So I'm going to hand over to Kobus, who is going to take us through the summary.
Thank you. Thank you, and a big thank you for allowing us back in your community. I've said this before, and I'm sorry if I'm repetitive, but we really are humbled to be able to work with people in their place. We respect it's your place, we respect it's your values, and for us it's a privilege to do this. And it's been a privilege over that whirlwind week. I had to go home to see if I'm still married. I'm happy to report there is still a tenuous link there, and we'll find out tomorrow whether how tenuous that link is. I do need to welcome Jan, who's in from my team, and also recognise Wayne, who some of you met last time, who contributed to this, and Susanna in my office, and between us did quite a lot of work in between. Just to be clear, can you hear me? Is this actually working?
Yeah.
It's working at the back? Thank you. And so, also want to say this is unbelievably exciting to be invited in at a time when I can just see things changing in this community. The hunger we experienced in the community of yourselves and many, many others just wanting to participate, wanting to have a say, wanting to be part of what this district is, was truly astonishing. I work in many, many communities, and often it's a labour of love, and you're going to drag people along, and the cynicism is so thick that they just don't want to bother. I think you can sense through your mayor and through your leadership and elected members that there's a very serious intention here of affecting change for the better. But let me say, not that you are at an abysmal level. You've got incredible values and qualities here, which we'll see expressed tonight by yourselves. And so that change, which is just a healthy aspirational condition, lives very strongly in this community, that hunger for change. And to build on what's good, to fix what's broken or what's not working, and to be aspirational with new thinking. So for me, that's been almost overwhelming, just how all of that's come through. So we did just to be very clear about the process, and we can never say this enough. This is called the blueprint process. It's informal, doesn't have any statutory quality. It's us talking as colleagues and friends and community members and citizens to each other. And that's what we've been doing up to now. It's not us putting a peg in the ground, calling our lawyers and insisting on our rights. This is us collectively, or you collectively, with us on the fringes, you collectively having a conversation with yourselves. And this presentation tonight will be followed up by a report by the end of May in 3 short weeks. We will put this into something that's actually legible and intelligible with all of this information on the wall. Some of it's actually been added to since, and some more, the whole data show. Plus we will put in appendices all your drawings, dozens of them. And we'll also put the digitized versions of those drawings, in other words, the writing up that we then use as a basis to inform these tables. All of that will be available to you. We just ask you for a little bit of patience. It's going to take us probably the 3 weeks or so to go to that next step. And so tonight is about informing you, reporting back as we promised. In about 3 weeks' time, you'll get that material, direct access and commentary and feedback and so on. And that's the end of May, and in June, the LTP long-term plan and the district plan process, already some of these things have already started to a degree, but in earnest the long-term plan starts to work through for over the next year. That's the formal process. That's where you'll get consulted again. That's the statutory elements to that process. But what this is doing, it's that process not just starting from a standing position. Now you've got a set of councillors who, when they fully absorb this, who are going to start with the community ringing in their ears when they think about the long-term plan. And that is, I think, somewhat the promise I'm hearing, the promise that you receive in the election process with the leaders that you've elected. And so don't confuse this with that process. This process, these ideas inform that process. No decisions have been made about which ideas go forward, which don't. That is yet to come, and you'll be part of the formal part of seeing how that plays out. Just wanted that to be clear. Who and what we asked. So we really did work hard, and I really have to commend both the mayor and councillors and the technical team and senior management and Rhonda and Sean and Ethna, who's here from communications, and others for us doing it. This felt a little bit like when you've got a sort of halfway famous rock band that then gets a bit too old, and then they go on this country trip and play in pubs and small places. It felt a bit like that, but it was really super cool, going right to the heart of communities and sitting in your places, and sometimes small numbers and sometimes pretty large numbers by comparison. The 40 there jumps out when you look at populations and so on, and people came. And gave us a bit of appreciation of the district and the geography, and from our understanding, the yellow colour here will change once the dam is built, and you will really thrive then. But this helped us geographically. We had over 300 people attend these sessions. That's a very high number for your community size. We had others who tried to attend, but they had standing room only. And we visited, and for me as an architect, or a sort of lapsed architect, like a lapsed Catholic, as an architect by training, and still my first love, was just so enthused by going into the heritage and the core and the heart of your little community. And I actually personally grew up, so there's a bit of nostalgia there for me in another life in similar small places. And you'll recall, most of you I think were there, will recall we asked 2 questions. One about the now. What do you value most in the district? And that's what we've sort of started summarising there, and we'll give you more flavour of that. What's holding the district back? So we wanted the positive and the negative, and people were pretty clear on that, pretty forthcoming, and very articulate. And then what does a thriving future look like? What is, and what are the ideas that will help you get there? And if you have something specific for the along, then that's fine. And so it was about the now and about the future. And some of you will be probably present in some of these photographs, but this is the nature, and this is a community talking to itself. And let me say, listening respectfully, and where there were differences, they were stated, but in civility and with respect, but let me say, there were more concurrences than differences, which is pretty amazing when you're coming from the outside to get that sense. And of course, we did the work in this way, and many of you produced these. There was lots and lots of material. The handwriting varied, and some of it bolder than others. Somebody was trying to really make the point about the rates up there. And some of them were really super tidy. There's a font involved here, we're not sure which one. And even the bullet points were pretty forward-looking. We had 70 of those sheets. And if you take roughly, let's say on average, 50 ideas, that's 3,500 ideas we harvested in that process, which gave us which became a living nightmare for us to process and digest and to sort of group and to build themes around. But it was a real pleasure, and the reason why it was a pleasure because I was there and I felt the energy that was going into them and the sincerity that was going into them, and that gives you a lot of energy later, and therefore just a pleasure to participate in trying to pull this together. We got some ideas, and there were many ideas which have previously been prepared in the communities. This was in Porongahau, some ideas that were tabled, and they, like other ideas, just go into the mix as well. And we tried to give you a range of ways to participate. And we got some fabulous and very concise descriptions and suggestions. The silver economy, I beg your pardon, whoops, sorry. The silver economy, I've slipped up there. The silver economy, and some pretty teutonically organized presentations, I have to say. I don't know how much German history there is in the region. And some quite poetic, I don't know how much French history there is in the region, but some pretty poetic little statements too. Of course, this came up and we allowed free rein around the dam, and we eventually started talking about the dam, one spelled with an N in it and then the other one without, and we let people talk about that. That was actually, it was just accepted as a parallel issue and not the centre point of debate. But there was quite sensible thinking around, should the dam happen, then this, and if it doesn't happen, then that kind of thing. And people were pretty pragmatic about that. Some nice diagrams, and some of these things, some of them we think made as a little bit of psychoanalysis, just in terms of what's going on in people's minds when they draw like this, but it's pretty helpful. And then deeper psychotherapy may be required for others, and then some pretty hysterical stuff as well. A thriving look. So when we looked at sort of all the millions of words and just tried to do a bit of a sort of a word table around which are the bigger words that just popped up. This is both positive and negative. But the thing that was just, I became sick of the C word, community. I didn't. It was unbelievable. Almost the first thing everybody said is, we've got a strong community. We believe in community. We believe in people. And that humanity being right on the surface, and it wasn't rehearsed, and it wasn't somebody saying anything else, because we had 13 of these sessions, And I can tell you it came up pretty consistently, pretty early on, pretty top of mind. There's a very strong sense of community here in that way. People are realistic, they know their deficiencies, they know their strengths, they know, but, and classically people would say we've got each other's back. And that's not a sentiment. You see that in the movies in the city, but you don't hear it on the street that much. And I think you should treasure that as clearly you do. A lot of positivity around the facility. Yeah, and you don't expect communities to be grateful for their facilities. And people were overtly positive about their facilities and how well endowed you are with facilities across the district. And you are probably pro rata better endowed than most other districts in the country. But employment was an issue, and so in employment the negatives came up around a lack of or a shortage of, and in terms of employment. And then water supply came up a lot, visitors, making more use of visitors, and the visitor economy, business support came up a lot, red tape, those sorts of things. And being more proactive about getting business here. Education, a bit of it around the quality of education, but also other types of education. And the internet came up a lot. Maybe it should have been a bigger thing in my mind, but maybe people heard it being said so quickly early on that it wasn't repeated that much. But certainly was a big thing. Communications, cell coverage, and broadband and so on. And then other, sort of a whole series of other words that just followed through there. But when we look at those three questions we asked you, what you value most, this came up, as said before, and came up really early on. Your facilities came up. Your mountains, rivers, beaches, so much natural beauty was very strong flowing through. And it was done, I think, sort of healthily around a very high valuing agriculture, very, very highly, valuing the natural environment very, very highly. And I think quite a mature sort of balanced conversation about those two and sometimes the tension that exists between them. But I actually felt the conversation to be pretty level-headed in that sense. And I think probably everybody in the community wants both of those to do well and not at the expense of each other. And proud of our diversity, and let me boldly say that came from elements of the Maori community and the Iwi session that we had, but it came out of, if you like, mixed company as well, and pretty spontaneously. Community values, identity, our central location and climate. And what is encouraging for me is it's not like you feel you want to belong to elsewhere. You understand the sort of boundaries between which your territory is. And there's people have strong relations and lots of business and other connections with Hastings and elsewhere, but it's not like you're hankering to be Hastings' little brother or something. There seems to be quite a good acceptance, if not pride, about the territory that's marked off for as your district or defines your district. What's holding you back? Lack of mobile internet coverage. That probably would have come through in every session, almost the first thing. Not enough jobs and skills. Housing, especially for older people. Public transport, not too sure what that precisely means. There's a lot of bus transport, and you've got long distance coaches and stuff. But the absence of that movement in whatever form seems to be an issue that came through. Not visitor friendly enough. You're friendly enough, but your region's actually not friendly enough in terms of the infrastructure and what opportunities it provides visitors to actually spend more time and spend more money here. And that came through quite strongly. Water supply, and obviously quality and supply, talking about household water, And of course that was variable, because some communities are better off than others in that regard, but where it's an issue, it's a big issue. Not enough growth or money, and so there's quite a big appetite for growth. But that very first one about the community that you treasure, it feels like you don't want growth at the expense of the community cohesion that you've got. What does that translate into? That means when you have growth areas and when you have extensions, you've got to physically, and this is sort of our area, I guess, you've got to physically connect those growth areas back into towns. They've got to have quite good proximity on the towns and settlements. If you start popping little things up here and there and start getting isolated communities or internalized communities, you won't keep the community character that I'm hearing you value. There's a physical relationship in terms of community strength and actually the physical connecting up of streets and connection, the proximity of people. And I can give you a big lecture which will put you to sleep on that. But there are ways of dealing with that. And as are guidelines to help with the quality of growth, so that you don't get inferior quality of growth undermining your current expectation. Visions and ideas, bustling, vibrant towns and villages. That tells me we've got to take care of your town centres and your villages. And we've got to, or you've got to, actually think a little bit harder about your town centres and who's at the helm of where they are heading. Have you got good enough town centre coordination and management? Is there that sort of leadership? And whether it's via council or via the town centre community itself, shopkeepers, landowners, business owners, or a combination. There are millions of different ways, but how can you have those little engine rooms of your economy, your non-agricultural economy, with strong links and support for agriculture, but how can you have them not with a clear idea of their direction? How are they branding themselves? Who are they trying to get into town centres? Which business are they trying to attract? How are they handling retail, etc., etc.? And new businesses and employment for the youth came up very strongly as this is aspiration. This is people looking into the future and saying, if this place is thriving, this is what it would look like. Be a tourism destination. And people would understand that it's a tourism destination from the outside. On your terms, which I think is sort of a more casual interpretation of tourism than the sort of, if you like, sort of the Queenstown high energy interpretation. I think yours is a different one, closer to the nature of your district, authentically closer. People love that. There's a hunger for that authenticity and that interaction and experience at that level. But you've got to have bits of infrastructure and you've got to put the message out. Healthy environment, clean, reliable water supply. That's what you said about the future. More education and training options, and there's a link obviously with employment and training, and education and training, and all of those things of prosperity. Public transport again, and cycling options. Those were quite district-wide ones. I'm now going to just flash up just a few samples from the particular areas, because we looked at this district-wide and then of course each area in itself. Let me say that I thought more or less in those conversations that the communities were spending maybe a third of the time on their own community closer in, as we encourage them to do. But 2/3 of the time, these communities and the communities that you come from, relatively small communities, 2/3 of the time they were actually talking about the district. I found that to be very healthy. And I found, people they'd be saying, oh, we need this or that, and I'd say, oh, yeah, we need a small place. They say, no, we don't mind. could be in Waipawa, could be Hawke, could be, you know. They were relaxed about that because they were seeing the district as a whole. But let me just pick up a few specific ones. Don't try and read all of these. You're going to get this in the report. You just get a headache, and you'll see something missing there, and then you'll accuse me of missing something out. Get the report because we've got everything layered and linked back to when that comes out, linked back to these summaries. But these are just a few highlights. Of course, the pool here and the idea of pensioner housing, which may not be particular only to this place, maybe it could happen somewhere else, footpath upgrades and so on. Main Street facilities, and I think Main Street upgrade and shop fronts and so on, I think that came up quite heavily at least twice, and at Hawke as well. And again, some of the things that came up there in the roundabout, and some of these, the retirement village, the idea of that, bird sanctuary, etc., etc. It's just a snapshot. It's not totally representative, but I wanted to give a flavour, almost more for the other communities than for your own, so that people can get a flavour from elsewhere. Iwi, we had a very good, I thought a very good meeting there. A strong desire there to I think have a stronger dialogue with the rest of the community. A desire to see somewhat more recognition of Iwi and Maori history, which is so incredibly rich here. The idea of a trail and an Iwi trail, which can combine with lots of other recreational things and have wider use and implication, maybe a museum, and they brought this up, but many other groups also brought up the issue of drugs. And people were honest enough to raise that issue because it seems to be a reality. I don't know if it's better or worse than elsewhere, but it's pretty healthy if a community has that self-recognition, because then you can do something about it. And every person you take out of drugs into some form of contribution to society or employment reduces a negative and it adds a plus. It's actually a double value you get out of that. And so don't underestimate that. But it's a tough one, and of course it's not going to be solved by council per se, but council can have a strong role in advocacy and facilitation and try to help things happen in that space. Flemington, I love Flemington. Also, there was also, obviously in a small but very agricultural community, there were quite a few issues around road seals and stuff. We just picked out a few of the slightly differentiating things, but they had a lot more to say. You'll see that in the appendices with the actual verbatim reporting. Marketing, and I think that one of the things that I recall from the marketing was they got quite a good website with a funny name which doesn't sound anything like a marketing, Fred or something. Sorry, what? Oscar, yes. It could have been Fred, and I think they need to change the name for a start. But I think they made a bigger point, and there were 2 points that they made which stand out for me. One was we need to connect with other communities, and maybe the council can be the platform for that connection. So it was a technical point, but allied to that was we subscribe to the district, but we have no idea what's happening in Takapā. We have no idea what's happening in the other further places. And that may be something that other communities feel as well. And so the big thing that surfaced for us is just this linking up and communication across the district. Can council play a stronger role in that? There seems to be a hunger in that at that level. Development Museum, the RV Park, water meters, and so on and so on. And the idea of a MAFA-proof container area came up there. Whether they meant it to be in the place, I can't quite remember. But again, it's just a sample. Otani, And Otani Otani's got this sort of overflow effect from Hastings, and so it's got another dynamic to contend with. And it also has, there's some reusable houses there, a bit of conversation around that, and maintaining quality and so on in that respect. So I just wanted to give you just a flavour of these. Whangaha, there's apparently some issues with the transfer station, and some ideas around the upgrade, and just many more issues that came up. Tekapau, water supply quality, obviously people don't want to mow their berms, I'm taking, and youth activities, the lack of or the need for. Te Kina, quite a lot of issues for a small place. There were some school kids involved. That was pretty cool. And I don't know if it's because there were boys there, but they were taking the netball court and wanting to turn it into tennis into netball, or netball into tennis. Maybe I've got this the wrong way around. And a cool little thing about open the school playground to the public and stuff. There's some nice useful things, but also some of the other bigger things too. So that was just a flavour of the local stuff. So us confronted with 3,500 to 4,000 ideas, 70 pages in 3 categories of thinking. We knew that was going to be utterly useless to you if it was just a long, linear, rambling list of all of these ideas. It needed, for it to make any sense for practical use, it needed some form of structuring, and so for our sins we applied ourselves to that. And we also applied ourselves to trying to translate those ideas into actions or projects, possible projects or actions, to kind of take them a step further. Some of them were clearly defined and we could just lift it across. Because without doing that, this would just be a talk fest and you would have had a good time, and then the anticlimax would begin, and a year later you'd say, what was that about? And then the cynicism would kick in. So we worked quite hard, and we came up with these 7 themes just for this exercise. Now whether your council sort of take these themes into the long-term plan or future structures is up to them. I suspect they'll work these and manipulate them to even better suit the way they want to move forward. But this is just how we've brought this up for this process. And the first thing we felt, there's a lot of things that fall under the category of being a proud district. And you want to be, but you want that pride to be communicated better, and what you're proud of, you want to have communicated better to beyond the district. You want it communicated internally, of course, and things which actually underscore and support the idea of a proud district, not proud community, because that's what I was hearing at the broader level. You're signing up for a broader identity. The communities still exist and the micro-identities exist, but in a subset way. The second big category was a prosperous district, and you'll see some of the subheadings there. But you want, not out of greed, but you want prosperity, and that's a commendable aspiration, and you want it for people at the bottom end of the ladder and the more aspirational people at the top end as well. And so there's a bundle of things that fall for us within that category. But you do want your local identities and strong community at local level, and there are ways of helping strengthen those local identities, if you like, but not at the expense of the district. It's a bit like rugby. If club rugby is strong, you've got a chance that the All Blacks are strong. If club rugby is weak, well, that's going to filter upstairs. And so there's no conflict there. As a district, you're a collection of communities. And if they're strong communities, you'll be a strong district. But there's also this thing of just the individual, the connectivity of the individual, the isolation or the connectedness of the individual. And we felt it's sort of useful to separate that out. A lot of these things overlap between, they don't get too uptight about the precise bundles of where the initiatives fall in. But we just found that to be useful. We thought there's a useful category around smart growth, the thing I spoke about earlier, that you want growth, and you want growth because you want to refresh your population, you want younger people to come in, you want the business and the energy that can come with that, but you don't want to destroy the community structure and the cohesion, if you like, within the community. And you don't want to ruin nature in the process. That comes across clearly for me. To do that, you're going to grow smartly, not just at any cost. And there are ways of doing that and still keeping things affordable. And then being nature friendly, which was just a category for us. And we purposely didn't call it sustainability or one of those where we use that word quite pointedly in a little subset. But I think that's how the general public would probably identify themselves if I look at the tone of what came through. And then durable infrastructure. Infrastructure that supports and that will last. And so what you see on the wall is just a series of all of that information packed into on those channels, and the way it works is the consultation was what we value, what's holding us back, and the vision for the future. But out here is an extrapolation, and this is my interpretation, not council's interpretation, my interpretation of which initiatives correspond with those consulted ideas. And so if you want to blame anybody, blame me. But it's me trying to be true to what I was hearing and trying to add, if I dare say, a bit of professional added value in terms of interpreting those into strategy, something that you can then go away, budget, do action, get some outcome, without giving any priority or preference. And so those sheets which you see up on the wall, 7 big themes, if you like. And if we go back to the themes, a proud district is about how do you practically put your brand out there, and thrive may be part of the language, but that brand that depicts you in a way that the rest of the country can grasp and associate with. Getting a good prospectus, you've got quite a good prospectus, but it's about, I believe, 7 years old, 6 or 7 years old. So getting a good prospectus out there which spells it out for people looking for opportunity. You know, when somebody's good at something in business, they're not good at the demographics and the sort of economic disposition of sub-regions in New Zealand. They're good at what they do. They're manufacturing widgets or something. You need to go to those people and say, we know there's a deficiency of what you do in our region, and this is why we're a great place to live and come and work in. That's what a prospectus does. An information point is about getting, is about when people reach, say, the website of council, that they get a lot of information of what's in your district and region, and you get explained through that website. Prosperous district, you'll see up there some business attraction and business approaches to actually see how you can be more business friendly, but attract businesses. Apprenticeship schemes, how can you get employment in? How can you deal with the underemployed or the unemployable? How can you make them employable? And how can you help people? And we're hearing in this very room, we're hearing about businesses who are short of personnel and having to go outside the district, when you actually have people here who maybe just not need a bit of help in terms of qualifying or being good to actually fill those positions. Strong communities, community plans, the ideas of actually, and we heard very strongly that local communities want to have a say in their own future, even if it's at a more modest scale. So can you maybe have little community plans with maybe limited powers, but actually where you keep, it's okay, actually where you actually keep, have a contribution back into your own future. And with communities come the EV, youth, seniors, health and crime, so you'll see issues up there. Connected citizens, and that's got a lot to do with communication and some of those things we spoke about, but it's also to do with access and walking, and between Waipuk and here, you've heard a lot about that connection, and actually there's some progress on that. I've touched on smart growth, barriers to growth, affordability, quality of the growth, retirement village. Do you do some more pensioner flats? Because retirement villages actually have quite a high entry cost. Nature friendly. You've got actually some good relations with the regional biodiversity initiatives. There's some QE2 initiatives happening. So there's actually some quite good work happening. I think there's some smaller scale local initiatives too in that space. And green waste management, part of that conversation. And then with infrastructure, the three waters, the basics there, how do you prioritize and how does council have a logical prioritization of delivering on that infrastructure? And so when we pull those together, it sort of brings us together in a sort of a rounded statement maybe of you and your future. This is just a compilation of the themes in a way, but a proud and prosperous district, strong communities, connected citizens who respect, celebrate nature. Thank you.
Thank you, Kobus. A summary of a huge amount of information, but some really positive information. And the journey for us as elected members at the council and the council staff now is to take this and translate it into the do in the community. And that's going to take a little bit more time as we do that. But there are some really special ideas that have come out in this, and the challenge for us is to pull all those things together as we go into the next phase and look at what are the things we're going to do, what can we fund, how do we work with people in the community to do these things. But a proud Central Hawke's Bay, a strong community who really wants to do well and do well together, and I think we need to take some pride in that we actually do want to work together on this. This is not about every man for himself. This is about everybody together, so I think that's really positive. And a very exciting process. I just want to touch on the practicalities of the process now, is that Kobus has all of this information, every single word of all of these sheets, and I do encourage you to, after this, to have a look at this. It's going to be available for everybody to see. You'll be able to go right through and say, well, actually, when I was in Takapau, I wrote something about rubbish bags. Where has that ended up? You will actually be able to translate through that whole thing, so we'll know exactly where everything came from. So we will all have access to that, including you guys. And then we will be looking at how do we take this and create a vision and a strategy which will fuel our long-term plan for the community to own and for the council to facilitate for the community. So still a bit of work to do on this, but I hope what you've seen here tonight is that we really want to do this together as a community. We're listening and we really want to be bringing on all of those ideas and moving it forward. There's still all of that, there's still lots more to go in terms of decision making. So there's still lots of time to do in that. I will encourage, I'm just about to close, I would encourage you to please, before you go, hop up and have a read through some of these things, because there are some great ideas. The little numbers next to the words means that's how many times it was mentioned. So there's some things that were said 23 times. So there were some pretty common themes in there. First of all, I want to thank Kobus and his team. He has put in a huge number of hours here in our community, and we've really valued that, Kobus. Thank you very much. in our council staff, there is two people in particular that need to be mentioned, and the first one is Bronda, who is the Chief Financial Officer, and she has been driving this project from day dot and has spent a lot of hours in the organising of it, so thank you very much, Bronda. And our roading manager has transformed himself into our interim chief executive for the next few weeks until we welcome Monique Davidson on board. So Sean, thank you very much for your leadership and contribution over the last few weeks as well. Thank you, Sean. Probably wraps it up. I can't wait to, so this is quite new for all of us to be able to see all this information, so I can't wait to get my teeth into having a look at this as well, and would love to be able to stay and have some chats with you guys about the things that you see and what you think it looks like. So thank you very much for coming out tonight. Exciting to see so many people, and we will be talking again soon. This is just the beginning really, there's way more to come, so thank you very much.